Have you ever tried recording your own vocal sample, just to be reminded of how bad your singing really sounds? Then you clicked on the right video because I'll show you how you can still make it sound beautiful. Before we get into the breakdown, the sample is part of my Taped Fields R&B sample pack. The link to that will be down in the description. It would really mean a lot if you checked it out. So I started with a chord progression. As always, I kept it very simple to have a nice foundation for my sample. The chords are just very basic minor 7 and major 7 chords, and I also layered them with a very simple bass line. I already liked the sound of the pad, so I just added some EQ and a chorus. I used this one shot to arpeggiate the chords, and to make it more interesting I used this pitched up delay that you can add in FL Studio. On that I added some Portal and recorded it into Edison. And then I reversed that recording and used it to fill up the space in between the chords. On that I added an effect rack with the Microcosm Sequence preset from Cryptic's Hue Effect Rack Bank, some delay, fruity flangers on the default settings, and then some EQ to cut the lows and the highs. I wanted to add some texture and depth to the chords, and for that I used my guitar. I just played in the chords, but in kind of a unique way. I used muted notes to make the chord sound like this. But I didn't want the notes to overlap, so I just recorded them one at a time, like this. So I did that for every chord, and then I just chopped it up and put the notes together again. And I also pitched it down an octave. I added lots of effects on this because I didn't really want it to sound like a guitar. First some pretty heavy distortion, but I turned the mix down a bit. Then a transient master to make the transient stand out a bit more. Little altar boy for a higher layer by turning down the mix a bit. An EQ to cut the lows and the highs. A crystallizer on the watery chorus vibe preset. And then some more EQ. After that I added some percussion sounds to add a bit of bounce and also fill out the empty space a bit. And now we have the perfect foundation to add our gorgeous vocals. I hope this didn't scare you away. We'll make this sound beautiful now. First I had to do some pitch correction with new tone. Here I like to just turn the variation down almost all the way and turn the center up almost all the way. Then I can choose the scale I'm in and click snap to scale. And sometimes I'll also pitch some of the notes up and down. And then to make these vocals really sound good, we'll have to add lots of effects. First some fruity flangers on the default settings. Decapitator for a bit of saturation, an EQ to cut out the lows and the highs, a bit of delay, another EQ, and then a very fast but very soft tremolator to make it flutter a little bit. I wanted to add a bit more presence and high end to the vocals, and for that I duplicated them. On that layer I added a limiter to really crush the vocals and distort them a bit. An EQ to only keep the high frequencies, and then some reverb. I routed both of these layers to a new mixer track. On that I added a little altar boy to bring the formants down, some fresh air to give them more presence and more high end, another EQ, some reverb, and then just some more EQ. For the second part of the sample I replaced the main pad sound. I started with this synth sound in Omnisphere. For this I really don't like the Omnisphere presets. I usually go to the sample section, and here you basically have all the dry Omnisphere one-shots. Under synthesizer and analog tones you can find some very clean synth sounds. For the effects on that I used this tail filter for a volume automation, some EQ, microshift as a chorus, and some reverb. I layered this pad with a one-shot, and a one-shot when it's dry sounds really ugly, but it gives a really nice layer to the high end when we add some effects. I used lots of plate reverb, a tremolator for a volume automation, an EQ to cut out the lows, a destructor with the background dicer preset, and then another EQ. And I added one more layer with this one shot that kinda fades in. On that I just added some EQ and a little alter boy to get a bit of a different texture. And I also added some variation in the bass line just by making the notes longer. So is it really necessary to put so much time and effort into a single pad sound? Well, no. But at the end of the day, it's these little details that will make your sound stand out from other producers. And I'd much rather spend more time on making one element sound good rather than making a bunch of melodies with generic sounds and just overfilling the sample. So yeah, I think it's worth it. To finish off this section, I just added a kick drum and an accent one shot. For the next part of the sample, I brought back the pad from the beginning and the short bass line, and I actually resampled the vocals from the beginning to make a beautiful little accent. I just rendered out the vocals with the effects, pitched it up an octave and added even more effects, some delay, lots of reverb, some distortion, and then an EQ to take out lows and highs. Then I added my signature reverse guitar, and in this sample I think it sounds so dope. As always, I freestyled some random riffs, reversed them, pitched them up an octave and then found the best chops in there. For effects on this, we have an EQ to take out lows and highs, fruity flanges on the default settings. I know I use this a lot, but on these reverse guitars it's really the secret sauce to get that beautiful sound. Lots of reverb, a delay, and some more EQ. For the last part of the sample, I switched the pad sound again and used the Omnisphere pad, but I chopped it up to make it much shorter, and I added these reverse reverb swirls that I pitched down an octave. And to finish it off, I added the vocals once again, but I resampled them because I wanted to make them sound a bit more muffled and lo-fi. To get that sound, I used the Stretch Pro stretching mode and brought the formant down all the way. Then I added a little alter boy for a high octave layer, some EQ to take out the high end, a bit of distortion, some reverb, and again the very quick but very soft tremolator. So yeah, that's a full sample. I know you're here for the vocals, so let me give you a quick recap on how you can do them yourself. The first step, of course, is to record your vocals. Try to come up with a few very simple but catchy melodies. And for that, I like to stay away from actual words or phrases. In my experience, when you can't sing, that won't turn out too well. I just stick with ooh kind of stuff. You can even use autotune on your voice to get like a little guide on what kind of melodies could sound good. But make sure to record the dry signal so you can take the autotune off afterwards. If you don't have a specific melody in mind, don't be scared to like record a few minutes of just playing around with your voice. So when you recorded your vocals, you'll have to pitch correct them with Newtone, Melodyne or any other plugin that does the same. If you want a more natural sound to your vocals, don't correct them too much or make the pitch too perfect. But if your singing is as bad as mine, you'll just have to accept that it won't sound very natural. The next step is optional, but if you want to change the like sound or texture of your voice, you can upload it to AI sites like for example Audemy or Musicfy, and there you can convert your voice to sound like a female, for example, or just like somebody else. So now when you have your pitch corrected vocals, it's time to chop them up. For this, make sure to get really creative to find a melody that really fits your sample sample. I like to listen through the entire recording and pick the chops that I like the most, and then I also like to make it twice as fast or reverse it and pick my favorite chops from these, and then at the end when I have a few chops I can just puzzle it together to make it fit my melody. You can even pitch some of the parts or chop up single notes, so yeah, like I said, just get creative with this. And then when you have chops that you like, you'll just have to put some effects on it. I really recommend Little Alter Boy or any plugin that can pitch your formants. Then of course EQ, reverb and delay. I also like to add some distortion or saturation sometimes. And yeah, just play around with some mixing techniques and interesting effects. Also get creative here to find your own source. And after that you should have your own beautiful vocal sample. Or I guess you could just skip these steps and learn how to sing.